Hello and welcome to another episode of Legally Marette or Legally Raven-haired. And today we are going to talk about leasing farmland. Where do I start? Okay, we're going to be making the PowerPoint together. I'm going to talk about where do we start with research. So we started with YouTube actually, and I just want to go here and I just want to give a shout out to the Mountain Farmer. I really enjoyed his website. I'm sorry, not his website, but I really enjoyed some of the things that he talked to me about here. So I started my first video that I watched with him actually was about leasing farmland and the things that you need to consider as a small farmer. So I watched that. And then one of the other things I did this is thoughts on farming in 2022. And one of the things that he talked about in this video was the fact that you see the cost of gas going up, but that cost is really affecting everyone. And so he uses a lot of fertilizer in his land. He's in North Carolina in the mountainous area, I think in Western North Carolina. And he said he used to pay 370 a ton for fertilizer. I think he uses something called maybe triple 19. And it now is, let me look at my notes and see if I remember, but it is 1160 a ton, right? And so that was in January. So he said that the issue is that, I mean, can he really charge three times as much for his crops? He said he wouldn't do it, so this becomes the problem. He said that a sack of sweet corn, which is 5 dozen, is $50 to $60. So that's going to be $10 to $12, right? So that's between what, about 80 cents and $1 for 1 ear of corn. So the price of everything is going up, and so that's going to affect the small farmer. So if you are looking to lease your farmland, that's something that you need to be aware of because that is going to affect the price to which people can pay for your farmland. So we have some family land in Alabama, and right now we have a couple acres leased, and we have more acreage that we want to look at leasing. So we just want to talk today about what are the things that we need to do to lease. So one of the first things that we found here is from the Farmland Information Center, Americans Farmland Trust. It talks about making my land available for farming. Where do I start? So I'm going to put this link here in the YouTube video, but it just really talks about helping you to understand yourself, know your goals, your current situation, think about the things that you need to consider, and then act to find resources. So I like this because it's a lot of fill in the blanks. A lot of people are like, oh, I want to do this, right? Because maybe I saw a YouTube video or maybe my friend is doing it. But the question is, why are you doing it? What is the vision for your property? Do you just want to activate the land? Are you trying to make some income? Are you looking to just get cash out of it? Or do you want to do an arrangement where, you take some rent and then you actually get some money from the crops that sell, right? The uses that you think that the crops that you think can be on your land. Is it pasture land? Is it farmland? Is it corn? Is it pumpkins? What is it? And then you find out whether or not that is realistic. And then sometimes that it isn't just farmland, but maybe there's a property on it. Do you want to visit it on the weekends? Do you want to live there? Do you want to have a home garden there? Like what is all about this land? So this really helps you to kind of understand who you are. Like you think you know, but sometimes when you actually start to put things on paper, it really makes you meditate and understand what your goals are, because you need to understand what your goal is for the land before you lease it to somebody else. So a lot of times people do 1 year leases to start. That's what Mountain Farmer suggests, just so you can kind of get to know the person that is farming. However, if you are leasing some land that comes with a property that somebody might live in, they might want to spend more on it. Or if they're going to do some heavy investment in the land, they might want a longer term lease. So all of these things are things that you're going to have to consider when thinking about leasing your farmland. So I thought this was really a great resource. The next thing we went to is we looked at our land is in Alabama. So we looked at Alabama farmland cash rental prices, right? So it looks like this is from 2020. Cropland averaged $66.50. That would be per acre per year. Pasture land was about $24 per acre per year. Statewide rate for irrigated cropland was 120 an acre, compared to $64 for non-irrigated cropland. So that's on a statewide basis. So as you can see that if your land has water on it, if your land is irrigated, it's going to be worth a lot more than if it isn't, right? Another thing Mountain Farmer talked about is, does the land have electricity on it? Is it close to some other land that you're farming? So a small farmer who has different plots of land, there, there's economies of scale if they can have something that's close to their other farmland, which means they can afford to pay more because they're going to be spending less money and less time going back and forth. So now we want to see what resources does the USD have for us. So the USDA has the Farm Service Agency. So we looked at the Alabama State Office, but then we want to look for our county office, right? I found the people very helpful. So our land is in Greene County. So we click here and we see here the farm loan manager is in Tuscaloosa. That's Thomas Boyd. I called there, spoke with a very nice woman who gave me a lot of information. And then she suggested that I actually call Utah, Alabama, Greene County, which is actually our land is in Utah. And I spoke with Alex Crawford there, the county executive director. He's actually going to send me over a template lease. And he told me that it's where the land is. It's going to be, he was really kind of hesitant to give me because you don't want to tell people and it's not true, but it's going to be out about 10 to $15 an acre per year. So here we have about 75 acres. So we would be looking anywhere between 750, just to be on the casual side of, I mean, we don't want to get too we don't want to get too, we want to be more conservative is what I'm trying to say. So we can get between 750 and 10 $1,075 a year. So my question would be, is this enough to cover the taxes on the land? I don't know. I need to look and see what the tax basis is. And so we actually can do a case study on this particular piece of land so we can see, what is its value in doing something like this. All right, now, marketing farmland is just really going to be tough in the next year or so, just because of the cost associated with it. So, when I called there, the woman here at the office in Tuscaloosa, she gave me a very, 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 very simple lease. It just kind of says, the leaser's name and the leasee's name, and then, the leaser being the landowner, and then the tenant being the leasee. And it talked about, okay, this is the date that it's made. And then she also said that you would talk about, the price you're going to pay. And then the question is, you have to say that you're not getting any type of government, you're not participating in any type of government programs, or if you are, you need to disclose that. So a more complicated lease that I see here is done. So apparently the state of Alabama Department of Corrections own land that they actually lease out to people. So we see here, this is their agricultural lease. This is a little bit more in depth. This is from 2019. So we might want to contact them, which is something that I can do and see if they have a more updated lease. This is a sample, right? But we see here that what's going on here. So it talks about this is the land property here, right? If it's just plain land, it's not going to have an address. So this would be the legal description of the land. And then how many acres that you have here. Then we talk about how long are you going to be there for? Is it just going to be for 1 year, or is it going to be for multiple years? Then we talk about what type of consideration. This is going to be how much are you going to pay for it. So in consideration whereof the leasee agrees to take said property for the term stated and pay the leaser an annual lease amount of this, right? So that is where you have here. Now they did bid deposits because they are a government agency, I'm assuming, and so you probably get that deducted from it. That's something we wouldn't need to do, right? So this is the annual rental payment. They want it paid right there on January 1st, and it's going to be due every January 1st. And they put an escalation in it of 1% from the previous year's rent. All right, so this is telling us, okay, how do you make the payment? Where do you send the payment to? What should be on the check if you're going to make a check? If you're going to accept some type of digital payment or things like that, you need to let people know how they're gonna pay you. Then here we talk about the use of the premises. This talks about you only want to use for agriculture purposes. So for instance, just thinking like what else it could be used for. A lot of people on YouTube and people are creating these experiences, right? People could put yurts out there and then put it on YouTube and then have people coming in and out of your property on a weekend basis. Hey, spend the weekend on a farm, right? Is that something that you want? Yeah, you don't want that. And then it talks about what you don't want removed from the land. So leases shall not damage, severe or remove any trees from the premises without prior notification and consent of the lessor or the landlord. Trees, seedings, or saplings, alive or dead, shall not be disturbed in any manner nor removed from the premises without prior consent of the lessor. So trees are also money, right? This is something that add value to your land. So you don't want them to not clear any land or cut down to use for timber or to allow another person to clear or cut down any timber. Like that's, you don't want that to be allowed. Okay, examination of premises warranty. Leasing shall examine the said premises before taking possession, and entry into possession shall constitute conclusive evidence that as of the date thereof the premises in good order and satisfactory condition. So this lease is granted and accepted without any warranty of title, without any recourse against the leaseor or landlord whatsoever, either express or imply. It is being expressly agreed that the leaser shall not be required to return any payments received here under or otherwise be responsible to the leasee. Therefore, so it's saying, look, you go and look at the property. Once you pay us, the money is ours. You saw it, you decided this is what you wanted, and so this is what you're going to get, right? We're not going to give you any money back. So, care of the premises, it talks about the leasee shall not permit, allow, or cause any act, deed, or depredation to be performed or committed on the premises, nor allow any practice to be adopted or followed in or about the premises which shall cause or be likely to cause injury to any person or damage to the premises or any property located thereon. Leasee will take good care of the premises and will return said premises to leaser at the expiration of the termination of the lease, in at least as good a condition as at the commencement of this lease. So we want it back in the same or better condition than we gave it to you. Fire prevention, it talks about the leasee will exert reasonable efforts to prevent fire on the premises and will exercise due diligence in extinguishing any fire which might occur on the premises. The provision shall not apply to the prescriptive uh, silviculture or agriculture burning practices performed as authorized by the leaser. So you might need to do some agriculture burning. That's allowed. That's authorized by the leaser. But any type of fire, like you need to put it out. Right. You need to put it out and try to make sure that it doesn't happen. So then we also talk about road maintenance. It says the leasee agrees to maintain all the field roads and trails on the premises in good and passable condition in accordance with Alabama's best practices of forestry published by the Alabama Forestry Commission. So your land might not have roads or trails, but if they do, the leasee will refrain from using said field roads and trails for vehicular traffic during periods of wet weather. So when it's wet weather, we don't want vehicles going out there because we don't want to ruin these field roads and trails. So leasee will drain and fill all wet places in the roads and trails, maintain water bars, and otherwise prevent erosion. No new roadways, trails, or other travelways shall be clear, constructed, or improved on the premises except on the express written approval of the leaser. All roads constructed by the leasee, except any lost through reclamation, shall become the property of the state. All roads constructed or used shall be left in good condition with proper provisions made for drainage and runoff. So look, you cannot build any more roads unless you ask for permission. And any roads that we do have there, we want you to keep them in good condition. So improvements in equipment installation, leasee shall not locate or construct shelters, buildings, or other such improvements upon the premises without prior written approval from the leaser. Leaser shall not be responsible for or otherwise liable for any damage or to any improvements. All improvements, including permanent fencing as provided in paragraph 10 of the lease, shall become property of the state upon termination of the lease. So any improvements, permanent fencing or anything you do that, when the lease is over, it becomes to ours because now it is but it's attached to the property, right? It becomes real property at that point. So posting boundaries, notwithstanding paragraph 9 of the lease, leasee shall have the right to enclose the property with a fence or fences at his sole expense without prior written permission from the leaser. Provided, however, if leasee removes any monument of any sort marking the boundary line of the land owned by the state, leasee shall replace any such monument to the satisfaction of the leaser as reasonably possible. So look, we did a survey, we have the land, the boundaries of the land figured out. If you move it, it needs to be put back, right? So you do have permission to establish fences, but you got to be careful about those boundary markers. Property security. Leasee is required to maintain property access restrictions established by leaser through the locking of all gates and access to the premises. The leasee at his own expense may acquire and install locks on gates accessing the premises, provided, however, that personal locks must not interfere with leaser's access to the premises. Leasee's failure to comply with this provision shall constitute cause for immediate lease termination. So we want the property to be secure However, as the owner of the land, the landlord, the leaser, we have to be able to have access to the land. So if you don't comply with this, automatic lease termination, assignment or subletting. Leasee shall not assign nor in any manner transfer this lease or any estate interest or benefit therein, nor sublet the premises, nor any parts thereof, nor permit the use of the same or any part thereof by any person other than the leasee. Any attempted assignment, sublet, or transfer of the lease shall be null and void unless the written consent of the leaser be first obtained. Consent to any assignment, sublet, or transfer of interest under the lease shall not constitute a release, waiver, or consent to any other assignment, sublet, or transfer of interest. So without the leaser's permission, you cannot sublease, you cannot assign your lease to somebody else. If you do that, it's null and void unless you get the consent. And if you get the consent for any assignment, sublet, or transfer, you're still going to be liable. Okay, we may let you do that, but you're still going to be liable for that. Liable for the lease for the rest of the lease term. Compliance with laws. Leasee at all times shall fully and promptly comply with all laws, ordinance, orders, and regulations of any lawful authority having jurisdiction over the said premises. Leasee further agrees to comply with all state and federal laws which prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, age, gender, national origin, or disability. So if you want to lease here, you have to obey the laws, and that includes laws that prohibit discrimination. Compliance with approved agricultural practice standards. Leasee receives the premises in accordance with approved methods of modern agriculture and standards set by the Alabama State Department of Agriculture and Industries and the United States Department of Agriculture, and to so use their premises as to prevent soil erosion and other material waste. The rotation of crops shall be under such practices approved for modern agriculture by the state and federal departments of agriculture. So we want you to use the land in compliance with approved agriculture practices standards, both by the state of Alabama and then by the USDA. So that includes crop rotation. You need to prevent soil erosion and other material waste on the property. Fertilizer, chemicals, and hazardous materials. Leasee shall keep records on any and all insecticides, pesticides, fumigants, or commercial fertilizers applied to the premises. Such records shall be made available to leaser upon request. Leasee agrees not to store any insecticide, pesticide, fumigants, or commercial fertilizer on the premises. Leasee further agrees that he shall not store or dispose of any surplus agricultural chemical, empty chemical containers, or hazardous materials upon the premises. Leasee shall promptly remove from the premises any empty chemical containers and properly dispose of them in accordance with applicable laws and regulations in a safe and lawful manner. No hazardous materials of any nature shall be brought onto the premises at any time. No petroleum products shall be dumped on the premises. Furthermore, leasee, its agents, or assignees shall not carry onto premises any firearms or explosives. Leasee shall be responsible for any cleanup required on the property as a result of leasee's actions. In the event leasee violates the intent of paragraph 15, the lease may be terminated immediately. So fertilizer, chemicals, and hazardous materials, you got to keep a record because we need to know what did you put in this land. And these records need to be available at any time that we want to expect. And we don't want you to store any of that thing on this land. We also don't want any firearms here or any type of explosives on the land either. And if we find out that you're not working in harmony with these things, then your lease can be terminated immediately. Reservation of interest. Leaser specifically reserves unto itself all rights and interests in the premises not inconsistent with the restricted agricultural rights made the subject of this lease. The leaser specifically reserves the right um, to full use and enjoyment of the premises for all activities except farming, including without limitation, game management objectives, harvesting timber, to conducting other activities, prospecting or exploring for sand, gravel, rock, oil, gas, or other minerals, development or production of oil, gas, minerals, or other natural resources, including all activities incident thereto. This lease is conveyed subject to all other restrictions and reservations of record. So some areas within the premises are or may be in the future under active leases for oil and gas exploration through a third party, reimbursement for crop damage and or destruction that may result from oil and gas exploration activities will be the sole responsibility of the oil and gas leaseholder pursuant to this lease. In no event shall leaser of the state of Alabama or its agents or employees be liable for any damages of any kind arising out of any related to such oil and gas exploration or related activities. Some areas within the premise are or may in the future be purchased by a third party to promote economic development to the state. Third party leaseholders shall be required to make leasee whole by acquiring of any interest in the premises. In no event shall leaser of the state of Alabama or its agent or employees be liable for any damages of any kind arising out or related to any such economic development related activity. So basically, you have the right to farm. We have the right as the person who owns the land to do whatever else we want on the land. That means game management, that means harvesting timber, that means prospecting for oil, gas, or other things, right? And should your crops be damaged, we are not going to be responsible. You're going to have to take that liability up with the oil and gas company. So entry by leaser, leaser reserves to itself. Its agent employs the right at all times to enter said premises for any purposes. So we can come on the land whenever we want to. Indemnification, leasee shall indemnify, defend, and save harmless the lesser of from all suits, claims, demands, and actions of any kind or nature by reason of any breach, violation, or non-performance of any condition hereof on the part of the leasee. Leasee will indemnify, defend, protect, and save harmless lesser from any loss, cost, damage, or expense, including but not limited to attorney fees caused by injuries to person or damage of property while in or about the premises. Any and all property of the leasee or his agents may be located or kept on the premises shall be at the sole risk of the leasee. So anything you leave here is at your own risk, and any lawsuit or anything that you get involved in, anybody that gets hurt, injuries to person or damage to property, while it's going to be your responsibility and you need to hold us harmless. We are not going to be liable for it. So waiver, the failure of the leaser to insist upon strict performance of any of the covenants or conditions of this lease or to exercise any option herein conferred in any one or more instances shall not be construed as a waiver or relinquishment of any such covenants, conditions, or options, but the same shall be remain in full force and effect. The receipt by leaser of rent with knowledge of a breach of any covenant hereof shall not be deemed a waiver of such breach, and no waiver by the leaser of any provision hereof shall be deemed to have been made unless expressed in writing. Okay, so if we put a covenant or condition in this lease and you don't follow it, right? And we don't bother you about it and we still take your money, that doesn't mean we've changed the contract. It just means we don't feel like dealing with it right now. But the conditions in this lease are the condition in this lease. And the only way that those conditions can be changed is going to be in writing. Default. In case of the failure of the leasee to keep and perform any of the conditions of this lease, including without limitation, failure of the leasee to make any rental payment, the leaser shall have the right to declare the same terminated, and said lease shall immediately terminate the property interest herein. Lease shall revert back to leaser. Leaser shall take possession, and leasee shall vacate the same peaceably. No action for possession or termination taken by the leaser shall preclude any claim by the leaser for damages, either under the terms hereof or other some damages or other relief as may be provided by law. So if you go in default, immediately be taking the property back. Boycott certificate. In compliance with Act 2016-312 is codified by Alabama Code Section 4116.5. The contractor hereby certifies that it is not currently engaged in and will not engage in the boycott of a person or an entity based in or doing business with a jurisdiction with which the state can enjoy open trade. So you can't boycott a person or entity based in or doing business with a jurisdiction with which the state can enjoy open trade. Not exactly sure what that means or why that's in here. I'm thinking it's something we don't need, but we need to look up the act to find out. Debt to state and alternative dispute resolution. The terms and commitments contained in this lease shall not be construed as a debt to the state of Alabama in violation of Article 1, Section 214 of the Constitution of Alabama of 1901, as amended by Amendment 20, number 26. It is further agreed that if any provision of this lease shall contravene any statute of the Constitution, provision, or amendment, either now in effect or which may, during occurring the lease, be enacted, then the conflicting provision of the lease shall be deemed null and void. So if this lease is somehow now not in harmony with the Constitution of the state of Alabama, or if in the future the law changes and this lease is not in harmony with it, whatever that provision in the lease is now null and void. In the event of any dispute between the parties, senior officials of both parties shall meet and engage in good faith attempt to resolve the dispute. Should that effort fail and the dispute involves the payment of money, a party's sole remedy is the filing of a claim with the Board of Adjustment for the state of Alabama for any and all other disputes arising under the terms of the contract, which are not resolved by negotiating. The parties agree to utilize appropriate forms of non-binding alternative dispute resolution, including but not limited to mediation, to mediation, subject, however, at all times to the sovereign immunity of the state. Such dispute resolution shall occur in Montgomery, Alabama, utilizing where appropriate mediators selected from the roster of mediators maintained by the Center for Dispute Resolution of the Alabama State Bar. Independent contractor. Nothing in this lease shall be construed to create an agency relationship, an employee employer relationship, or a joint venture relationship among the parties. Nothing here in this agreement shall grant the leasee, its employees, or agents any rights or privilege created by the State Merit System Act. So you don't work for us. We don't need to know about the Prison Rape Elimination Act, immigration. The parties agree and hereby acknowledge that all terms, covenants, and conditions or actions taken under this agreement comply with all applicable state, federal, and local laws, including the Alabama Beeson Hammond Alabama Taxpayer and Citizen Protection Act as amended. By signing this contract, the contracting parties affirm for the duration of the agreement that they will not violate federal immigration law or knowingly employ, hire for employment, or continue to employ an unauthorized alien within the state of Alabama. Furthermore, a contracting party found to be in violation of this provision shall be deemed in breach of the agreement and shall be responsible for all damage resulting therefrom. So you cannot hire people who are not that are not legally allowed to work in the United States. Modifications. It is understood that this lease constitutes the entire agreement of the parties. Any modifications, renewals, or extension must be mutually agreed upon in writing by both parties. Termination privilege. The leaser reserves the right to terminate this lease upon 180 days written notice to the leasee. In the event that leaser terminates the lease prior to the expiration of the term, leaser will reimburse leasee for any rental amounts prepaid under this lease. Signature page to follow. So here we go. This is going to be a pretty good lease template to use because it's by the Alabama Department of Corrections, the State Department, clearly prepared by professional attorneys. It definitely has some provisions in there that do not apply to us for sure, that can be taken out of it. But I think that this lease covers many of the liability issues that you should think about. Now, one of the things that the Mountain Farmer talked about, I'm gonna have to look it up again, but he talks about sometimes after you take out your crop, the owners of the land want you to plant something else. They don't want the land to lay dormant or something like that. Once again, I don't know. I'm gonna have to research it and let you know what it is because I don't know the first thing about farming or leasing land to farmers for farming. So we're learning about this together. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Legally Noiret, where we learn the law together. So this is from the series Questions Lay People Ask: How to Structure an Agricultural Lease for the Leasing of Farmland. Thank you so much for tuning in. Talk to you again soon. Bye.